Hey y'all, I'm happy to be back and excited to put together this new series where we're going to explore some of the newer tools that are out there in the Ethereum developer landscape. And previous videos, it's been a while, but previous videos we've looked at other developer tools such as Ethers.js to work with Ethereum. And recently we've been using a lot of this tool called Viem. I think I'm pronouncing that right, Viem. And it has been super helpful in getting us going with working with Ethereum and developing apps against Ethereum, interacting with different smart contracts and things like that. And what we're trying here is a little bit of a new format. So I'm trying this new kind of video screen here, looking at my hands, and we'll see how this works out. So what I'd like to do in this video, I want to keep these relatively short, is just going to give you a brief introduction to Viem, what we're trying to solve with it, and then just go through the basic setup of just a vanilla Viem project. I'm not going to use any of the kind of front-end tools just yet. Like I want to be able to get into things like WAGMI and things like that in this series. This first video is just going to be a basic setup and just maybe connect with a public node to be able to get maybe the block number or something like that. So I'm on the Viem website right here, and it gives you a really brief overview on how to get started. Super simple. Before we do that, I want to go into this why Viem, and this is, I think, worth a read. It goes through, what the developers of this are trying to solve. They describe this quadrilemma here of developer experience, stability, bundle size, and performance. And this is coming out from the authors of WAGMI, which WAGMI is a pretty popular front-end tool for React. It provides a slew of React hooks. I hope to go into some of that as well. So let's go ahead and just try to set up a basic Viem project. And all we want to do is really kind of go through some of the getting started pieces here within the tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and get into my console here. And let's go ahead. And I have just an empty directory here. I called it Viem setup. And I'm just going to go ahead and do an npm init right in here. And this is just going to go ahead and set up a basic package.json file. That is looking good. Oh, yes. And we're going to go ahead and install Viem. And if I am pronouncing that incorrectly, please correct me in the comments. I did look up the how to say it earlier, so let's curious if I'm pronouncing that right. We're going to probably try to use Viem with Vite later on, which is a tool set, like a create React app tool set. So all these V words. So okay, so now we should just have a basic project setup. We have our node modules. We have Viem installed. One thing we do want to do is we want to go ahead and we don't want to do that. We want to edit here. We want to go ahead and change the type of project here to module. This way we can use imports in our JavaScript. So we're going to say type module, and that's going to look good. All right, so now let's go ahead and start the first step of this. The first step is to really define a configuration that we can use so that we can connect to an Ethereum node. That is really what we need to do whenever we're using any of these tools, is we need to connect to an Ethereum node. So that could be a node that you're hosting yourself locally, or that could be a node that's hosted by somebody else, like on public node, which I believe the default transport, the HTTP transport for Viem is using a public node. So let's go ahead and add a new file here, and I'm going to call it config.js. I'm just going to use vanilla.js for these tutorials. And we're going to go ahead and start to create our configuration. Now, Viem does come pre-packaged with a bunch of tools for us to be able to create a wallet in a bunch of different ways. What we're going to do here is we're going to use the create public client function to be able to create a client to an Ethereum node using just a public node. So we're going to go ahead and import from Viem create public client, and we're also going to need to bring in a transport, which we're going to use HTTP, and we're going to bring that in from Viem. Now, Viem also has a package that exports some basic configurations for different chains, which is kind of nice. So we could say we need mainnet, and maybe we're going to look at Holesky as well. Whoa. Holesky. And this is in the Viem chains package. Awesome. So now with our imports in place, we can go ahead and create a new client. So I'm going to say create a client is equal to create public client. And now this public client is going to take an object, and that object will have a couple of properties. The first is what is the network that we want to connect to. So in this case, I want to connect to Holesky. Let's go ahead and connect to the testnet. And then we have to define a transport, and we're going to be using HTTP as our transport here. We'll go into some of the details in some later videos for this. I just want to get a basic setup and just show you how we can actually get connected to a client here. So now with this client in place, we can go ahead and export this bad boy so that we can import them into other areas of our software. So I'm just going to go ahead and say export defaults, and we'll export that client. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and let's create a new file. Let's just call it index.js. Okay, so now inside of our index.js, we want to go ahead and import the client from our config file. And now we should have, if we console this bad boy out, we should have a client. So boom, there we go. So now our client has all of these methods that we can use. And these should be pretty familiar if you've used other libraries before for interacting with Ethereum. Things like estimate gas and get balance, get chain ID. It's chock full of tools that we can use here to be able to interact with the Ethereum network that we're connected to. In this case, we're connected to the Holesky testnet. And you can see here that we can see the URL that we're using. So we are using a public node to be able to interact with this. It is the public client. And we have a whole bunch of information here. So let's try to call the get block number on this to see if we can just simply get the block number and confirm that we're actually connected to. So I'm going to say const block number equals client dot get block number. This is probably async, right? So, and then we can, whoops. Let's just console.log the block number. And there we go. We have the block number. Awesome. Now, if we go to Etherscan, the Holesky Etherscan, we should see that we are, in fact, around 151.7881. Boom. Nice. So that is looking good. So we are interacting with Ethereum. So we are set up with Viem, and we're connected to the Holesky testnet. Excellent. So as we move forward, what I'd like to do in the next tutorial is most likely go through how to set up a transaction using Viem, and then maybe signing that transaction. And then we can look at maybe broadcasting that transaction to the network. Please let me know if this format is cool, if it's something that you're interested in. I will be creating more of these if you guys are interested in it. But yeah, I wanted to make this one quick and simple and just kind of experiment with this style. So if you like it, please let me know. If not, also please let me know. Any feedback is good. Thanks, guys. Bye.